Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're working on another modeling tip. So this is a Blender modeling tip. Today we're going to be creating a chessboard with some chess pieces. I want to keep it really simple. It's to help you improve your modeling ability in Blender application. So I'm assuming you already have the application. Let's get it started with a new general file. So with this general file, let's add a plane, okay? Or actually, let's start with a cube. Yeah, let's start with just one simple cube. And we want to move that cube out the ground, GZ, to move it upwards. And then we want to duplicate said, and we can actually, after it's duplicated, we can move this along the x-axis and just move it towards the right-hand side a little bit. What we're really doing is just making our chessboard. That's as simple as it gets. I don't want there to be too many gaps in between the pieces. I want it to be noticeable, but certainly not too many gaps. So let's just continue duplicating these pieces and give them some space. So that's 4 that we've got right there. I need another 4 pieces. So select all of those, duplicate, and move along the x-axis. Then we've got all of these selected. We can duplicate this and we can move it down on the y-axis. So we've already got 2, select all of those, duplicate once again, and move it down to get some spacing. We don't want too much spacing, just go over your work to make sure that there's not too much spacing, that it does look cohesive, it does make sense. And then with all of that, duplicate once again and move it along the y-axis. And there we have it, we have our chessboard. From here we can start making our chess pieces. Feel free to modify the chessboard to your liking if you'd like to add some bezel modifiers. Now from here we can start with our first chess piece. It should be a rook. So let's add a circle. Of course, we want to start with a circle base. Let's move the circle out of the ground, G and Z, to move this upwards. Let's scale it down just a little bit. Then from there we can tab in and extrude that just a little bit on the Z-axis. Extrude once again and scale inwards. Extrude once again, scale inwards, extrude once again, and scale inwards. We can extrude once again and extrude once again, and then we can scale outwards. So it's starting to take shape simply by just extruding the pieces and giving it a bit more of a detail. From here, if we'd like, we can actually fill this face and we can insert this face, insert once again, and press GZ and move this downwards. What's really unique is that now we can select some of these faces. So press 3 on our number pad, select some of these faces, one after the other. So every other face I'm basically selecting, and I'm doing this manually. There's probably another way to do it, but I'm doing it manually. And then I can extrude these faces and extrude them upwards. If I wanted to scale them inwards, but on their individual axes, I believe there's a way to do that. If we go to the top to transform pivot point, we can do individual origin, and this will probably, there we go, scale them individually. So that's also an option, but it's not the only option. You know, we can always scale it inwards to give it whatever effect you would like. But I'd say that's our first results. And of course, you can add a bezel modifier if you'd like. You can always add a bezel modifier to give it a bit more detail. It all depends on the effect you want to have. And if we tab in, we can add a loop cut right here to make sure that that detail is kept minimal if you'd like. You can always do something like that. We can also shade smooth. If we added a subdivision, you can see it solve a lot of those issues. So it's up to you to add the details that you think would suit your chess piece the most. And then of course I can duplicate this and move it along the other side of our chessboard. And if we select both of them, we can duplicate and move it along the y-axis. That's the beginning of our chess piece. Remember to save your documents just to make sure that you don't lose your files when you're creating your work. From here, next we need to create our knight. How do we make a knight? Okay, I've never really done this before, but I'm improvising. Let's try to make a knight. So I'm going to add a cube. Let's move our cube upwards. Let's move it towards the left along the y-axis. Let's scale this down. Not too much, of course. We want it to be similar size to our rook. Let's move it downwards onto our board a little bit. And let's scale it down possibly. Let's move it down even more. That's better. Let's tab in, select the top face, and then we can extrude. So the knight is supposed to basically be some sort of horse. So let's see what we can make essentially. So if I take this face and I basically extrude it upwards, I can then scale it along the y-axis, and I can extrude a little bit more. And then I can select this edge right here, the front edge, and scale this backwards. Just move it backwards just a little bit. And with the top face, we can extrude this outwards once again and extrude it outwards once again. And with this face, we can extrude this outwards. That's basically in the most basic form some sort of knight, but once we add a subdivision modifier, then we can really set the differences. Let's go to the face on top. We can always add some more details if we wanted to, but it's up to you in this specification. And then we can tab out and add a subdivision modifier by pressing 2. You see so far it's not looking particularly good, is it? We can add some loop cuts around these areas, and it starts to give it the outline that we're looking for. But you can see here at the top, if we can select both of these, edges, we can bring this down. We do after all want it to still look like a horsey. And with these ones right here, with these edge vertices, we can select those and scale them inwards, scale them along the y-axis. And that is looking a little bit better. Let's add another loop cut in the center. With this loop cut, let's bring it forward just a little bit. And with the loop cut at the rear, let's select both of these. Let's scale it inwards along the y-axis. And then we can sort of shade smooth. It's not really looking the best, if I'm being completely honest. Let's add a bezel modifier. I just noticed one thing that might help our knight to look a little bit better. If we tab in to our original knight and we go to these faces to be specific, and we want to extrude along normals, but maybe a few more faces and extrude along normals. Let's see what effect that can have. Now you see that's already looking a little bit better. It's looking a little bit more like a horsey. If you get any problems with the details, then what I simply do is level up my viewport on, I just move it up to around 5. 4 still looks good as well, so around 4 or 5. That looks better. And now if you like, you can change these knights. You can delete the older knights and replace them with the new knights. Let's create our bishop. So we want to start with a circle. Let's move this out of the board. Let's move it along the y-axis, scale this down, and then we can tab in, fill face, and begin extruding. I'll extrude once, extrude again, and insert. Then I want to extrude again and scale it outwards. Extrude once again, and extrude once again, and scale this inwards. And it's kind of the similar thing. We extrude a couple more times, scale out and extrude upwards, and extrude again and scale inwards. And then extrude all the way to the top and scale inwards. Extrude again and scale all the way outwards. Extrude once again and extrude once again and scale within. And I'll do that a few more times just to extrude, extrude, and scale outwards, extrude, and to scale inwards. Extrude once again, and scale outwards, and extrude and scale inwards. And from here, there it becomes a little bit more easy. We can extrude upwards, expand outwards, or scale outwards, expand outwards again, and there it suddenly slowly starts to take the shape of a real chess piece, which in this case it's a bishop. Extrude once again for the top and expand outwards, and extrude once again, and expand inwards. And from here, then we can add a subdivision. We've got a subdivision, and let's shade smooth. If we tab in, then we can add our loop cuts. And from there, that's actually looking quite nice. Let's make sure we save our documents We can start working on our king, of course. We can add a circle, and it's the same drill. Move it out the board, move it along the y-axis, and scale it down, not too much. Tab in, move this upwards, extrude it upwards once again, and scale within. Extrude it once again and scale outwards. Then we can move this up once again, move it up once again, and scale within just a little bit. We can extrude once again and scale within even more. Extrude once again, and scale outwards. We will then extrude once again and scale within. And extrude once again, scale down, and keep extruding and scale down. Once we get to around this area, we can extrude and scale outwards. Extrude once again, and scale within. And we can do this a few more times, because this is how the king sort of looks. You can see I'm just extruding and extruding, and I'm going to extrude once again and extrude once again and extrude once again. Then we can scale in. This is the king after all. So extrude once again and scale down, extrude once again and scale down. Then we can extrude outwards. We can press S and Y, scale this along the y-axis, and extrude once again, and extrude once more time, and scale within and extrude once again. Pretty good. So that will be our king. Let's add a subdivision modifier, shade smooth, and add some loop cuts to our model. Now it's down to you how much detail you want to give your chess pieces, but if you'd like to just follow along with what I'm doing, then feel free to. But feel free to experiment and do try new things, new shapes that perhaps would be quite creative. So that is our king. Now, to be honest, there's not much difference with our queen. So we can duplicate this one, move it along the y-axis. This will be our queen. The slight difference with our queen is the crown on the top of the head. So let's press Alt-Shift and let's get our X-way and select these vertices and press X, delete vertices. And then with the topmost vertice, we're going to work with this one. Actually, let's delete this one as well, X and delete vertice. Let's work with this one right there. And from here, we can actually extrude this. We can press S and scale this outwards, not too much. Then we can extrude upwards just a little bit and expand and extrude upwards once again and expand and extrude upwards again and expand. From here we can fill face, insert. Like I said, the queen sort of have somewhat of a crown. So we can select some of these faces similar to what we did before. So 7 on our number pad, and let's select some of these faces. I'm going to select them in 4s. So I'm not going to select the ones that are just directly next to each other. I'm going to be a little bit more strategic in my decision. I'm going to extrude this outwards, and I want to expand on individual points. So if I expand on individual points, then I can insert these pieces. Well, actually, before we extrude, let's expand on the individual faces. Then we can extrude, and then we can even expand a little bit more on individual faces, and then let's insert the faces. And this is what we add. If we start adding some loop cuts, you can see it gives it a rather nice effect. But that's looking pretty good so far. Then we can start working on our pawn. So then we can start working on the pawn. So from there, we can add a circle, and you know the drill by now. We want to move this circle outwards. Let's move it along the x-axis forward, and let's scale this down. This will probably be the more simpler piece. Let's extrude upwards. Well, let's fill face and let's extrude upwards. Extrude once again and scale within. And extrude once again and scale outwards. And then extrude extrude, and scale within. Then we can extrude and scale within even more, and extrude, extrude, scale outwards a little bit, scale outwards, scale inwards. And then we can scale a little bit up to the top and scale this down. Same thing, extrude, scale outwards, extrude, extrude, and scale inwards. From here, we want to add a circle on top. So while we're tabbing, let's press Shift A and let's add a isosphere. Then we can scale this down a little bit and move it upwards. It'll look a little bit like a football. But you can see if I tab out, that's all one object. That is all one object if I tab out. As you can see, then we can press Control 2 and that will subdivide. Then we can move the quality up to around 5, tab in, and we can start adding some loop cuts to bring out our detail. Then we can go to our modifiers tab and add an array modifier. With the array modifier, we'll probably want it to be -1, I would say. Probably a little bit more than -1, probably 1.3. And on the factor X, we'll have that probably at 0. And then of course we want 8 of these. Now you can see we have our factor Y at 1.003, right? And the factor X -0. Then we can duplicate these, move them along our board along the x-axis to the other side for the other chess player. And it's the same thing with the king and queen. Duplicate these, move them alongside the other chess player. And let's remember to save our work, our save in increments. What we can do next is, of course, I was consider a bezel modifier for my objects, of course. So I already bezel one of the squares, and if I want to bezel the other ones, I can just join this. So Control J to join, and they've all been bezel, and I can bezel them even more if I'd like to. So now the same effect will happen to all of them. That's pretty good. Let's save that document. Now in the next video, we can probably work on adding materials to these. On the next one, we can probably work on animating it, but you got to let me know if you'd like to see a video of me animating these pieces, or if you'd like to see a video of me adding materials to these pieces or animating these pieces. And the materials that we can add, there's all sorts of materials that we can add. There's no limit on this, but that was just modeling tip for chess pieces. Let me know if you enjoyed the video and if you'd like to see part 2 for animation and material. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in our next video. Remember to subscribe to join our community, and leave a like, and leaving a comment is really quite supportive. I'll see you in our next video.